Today is Tuesday, May 1st, and this is Celtics Beat on CLNS Media, the leading online provider of audio-video coverage of the Boston Celtics. Episode 261, featuring Mass Live's Tom Westerholm and Jessica Camerato from NBC Sports Philadelphia, is brought to you by Mack Weldon. Go to MackWeldon.com and use the promo code CELTICS for 20% off your first order. This show is also brought to you by Hims. My listeners get a special trial month of Hims for just $5 today while supplies last. Just go to forhims.com/CLNS. See website for full details. My goodness, that was fun, wasn't it? Game 1 Celtics win 117-101 against the Sixers, and now they lead the conference semifinals 1-0 with a long but fun series ahead. This is Celtics Beat. I'm Adam Kaufman, and look, I'm actually glad that this show is coming to you when it is versus just prior to Game 1 when it would have been a Game 7 recap and looking ahead in full to the series. Because that show, it might have been a little more stressful and a little less positive because I would have told you I have the Sixers in 6 and my heart would like to say Celtics in 7, but I don't quite think they'll get it done. But we wouldn't have had the optimism that Game 1 delivered us by getting to see what we did on Monday night. You know, it's only one game. Celtics shot 17 of 35 from three-point range. The Sixers made only 5 of their threes. C's are not going to shoot that well from 3 every game. They're not going to defend the perimeter as well every single game. But I'm at a point. Of course, no Kyrie Irving. Of course, no Gordon Hayward. Of course, Daniel Tice. But no Jaylen Brown for that first game either. That means the Celtics were down for this game on short rest coming off of that Game 7 win against the Bucks. They were down 60% of their opening night starting lineup. 60%, and still went out and just absolutely throttled the Sixers. It's only one game, like I said, but I don't even really know what the Celtics team is capable of anymore. It's so much fun to watch, and to me, I'm not going to go crazy here. I'm not really going to spend any time on this. But the East, to me, is so wide open. I don't think, we're not talking about the Warriors or the Rockets here. The Cavaliers are far from unbeatable. You saw what the Pacers just did, stretching them to 7, and they could have lost that series. The Raptors are not unbeatable, and now those two teams are going to beat up on each other a little bit. Sixers, while better than the Bucks and better than the Celtics, are absolutely a beatable team. And so are those other teams that the Celtics would hope to play next in the conference finals. So, just something to think about. It's not me being a total homer. It's a fact. Celtics could reach the NBA Finals. They'd get killed there. They would stand no chance whatsoever against the Warriors or Rockets. But the fact that they could even get there with the staff that they have right now, and I say this, after Game 1, who the hell knows what the next couple of games are going to look like. Maybe the tone of this conversation totally changes. But right now, riding a high, everyone playing the way they are, Brad Stevens coaching the way he is, it's possible. And I love this rivalry. I love these two cities going head-to-head. I love that it's the 20th playoff series meeting between the season Sixers, that the Celts have obviously won 12 of those. They've won 3 in a row, going back to 1985 in a rivalry that has seen the likes of Russell and Chamberlain and Bird and Irving and McHale and Greer and Cousy and Cunningham. The fact that we now can include Horford, Tatum, Rozier, Embiid, Simmons, and maybe, look, some of those are going to drop off. This is one game. And Brown, maybe he thrusts himself into that conversation. But it's nice to have another chapter. And I like the chip. I like the chip, the boulder-sized chip that is on the Celtics' shoulder. Matt Moore had a tweet after Game 1, said, "It's amazing that the Celtics signed Gordon Hayward, traded for Kyrie Irving, and they still get to play the scrappy no one believes in us card." Something to behold, really. It really is. In fact, Terry Rozier and Marcus Smart, they're not shying away from it.
No matter who on the court, we will coach. Our coaches hold us accountable for taking care of business, and we hold each other accountable. And that's the most important thing. That's why we don't never feed into the negative things that go around what people say. We got each other, and no matter who out there, we're gonna play hard, and we're gonna pay attention to details and take care of business.
We're down a lot of people, guys, and people think we're weak, think we're not as strong of a team because we don't have certain players, but we're all professionals. We all been here, and we all work, and we all got the same goal in mind, and that's to win. So regardless of who we don't have and who we have, we're gonna go out there and play.
If you haven't been checking out the CLNS YouTube page during the playoffs for all of the post-game content, practice content, videos of these guys, hours of sound from your favorite Celtics and the visiting team. The Bucks in the last round, the Sixers now. You should subscribe. You should do that because there is just, more content than you can handle. It does a good job of filling long car rides for me, so I'm very appreciative of that. But Game 1, Terry Rozier, Al Horford, Jayson Tatum, they combined for 83 points on 63% shooting, 59% from three, 94% from the free throw line for that quote-unquote new big three. Now, that is not going to maintain. It's not. Guys like that, some of them are going to have down games. Feels like Al Horford's never going to have a down game again. His last two playoff games, Game 7 and then Game 1, 52 points on 23 of 29 shooting. Anybody wants to mock that contract, please come at me. I would love to chat with you because average Al is all-star Al in its best possible form right now. He has been great. And Tatum, this is now at least 20 points in 3 of his last 4 games. The 28, the most in a playoff game since Larry Bird going back to 1980 among Celtics rookies. He is only getting better as time moves along. But look, I could go on and on and on. Maybe you want me to, maybe you don't. I don't know. But here's what I do want to do. Couple of things. One, I want to remind you, subscribe. Subscribe on iTunes to Celtics Beat or Stitcher, or follow me on Twitter at Adam M. Kaufman, wherever it is that you should happen to find this show. Subscribe, because new episodes, they're going to be coming at you, as evidenced today on a Tuesday at weird times. Won't always be the Sunday that obviously you've been used to in the past. Won't even necessarily be a Thursday like we've done a whole bunch over the last couple of months. It will be at weird times. So subscribe, get the notifications for new episodes. That's the best way to do it. Again, iTunes, Stitcher, or just follow me on Twitter. I will tweet them out constantly, and you can, in addition to that, make sure you leave us ratings if you feel so kind, or comments. We always appreciate it. The other thing that we're going to do, rather than me just continuing to monologue, is we had a couple of guests lined up, as you heard earlier. Tom Westerholm and Jessica Camerato, okay? They will get each side, Celtics and Sixers, although Jess has experience covering the C's as well. But let's dive right into it. Let's go to the Celtics side. Let's bring in Tom Westerholm. Does an awesome job covering the C's for Mass Live. Tom, it's not going to be this easy, is it? We could have seen Gino late in the game, but the Garden scoreboard operator, I guess, decided not to be disrespectful.
Yeah, maybe Game 1 isn't the game where you want to be disrespectful right away, especially against a team as talented as the Sixers. You can save that for a little later in the series. But, yeah, no, I can't imagine that it will be this easy the rest of the way. The Sixers missed a lot of shots they usually hit. The Celtics defended really well, which they always do. But, Brett Brown said after the game, the Sixers had a terrible game, and some of that was because of the Celtics defense. He gave the Celtics a lot of credit, but I think everybody kind of agrees that, Redick isn't going to miss all his threes. Covington isn't going to miss all his threes. They have a lot of shooters who missed a lot of shots. But Celtics kind of made it happen, too. The Celtics played a great game.
All right, I want to expand on some of that stuff defensively especially. But entering this series, Sixers, they were heavily favored. I guess maybe they still are. Depends on how you look at it and whether you want to read all the Vegas odds and all that. But I had Philly in 6 if I remove the green rim goggles that otherwise told me Celtics in 7. But what was your prediction going in, and has it changed after Game 1?
So my prediction was Sixers in 6 as well. That's kind of the safe prediction because the Sixers are favored, and they should be. They're very healthy. The Celtics aren't healthy. And obviously, a road team, that you think is going to win, 6 is usually a pretty good pick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think my prediction changes yet. I think if the Celtics win on Thursday as well, and we'll see how they look on Thursday. If they win that game, then yeah, everything kind of flips. But you can't really overreact to a Game 1. If you're picking the Celtics in 6, or the Sixers in 6, then you're picking the Celtics to win a game, and it's not unreasonable, a couple of games, and it's not unreasonable for one of them to be game one. But it goes beyond just the win. The Celtics looked great. Jayson Tatum looked awesome. Terry Rozier looked awesome. Al Horford that guy just steps up and does everything the Celtics ask of him. So, I think you have to take all of that into consideration too, which is why I'm wavering a little bit. But I'm sticking with Sixers and 6 right now. And willing to be mocked later if the Celtics, take this thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, that new big three that you just mentioned that nobody was anticipating. Let's go guy by guy. Average Al to some became assertive Al in the playoffs, just like last year for that matter. He's been elite in 3 out of the last 4 games. He's been exploiting matchups. He's finding himself obviously in the right position, but also taking advantage of it. Now, to me, he has to keep doing this to win this series, but will he?
Yeah, so you mentioned that last year in the playoffs he was really good, and he really was. And I think a lot of times what gets lost for people is that Horford really does just do what is required of him. If the Celtics have Kyrie Irving and presumably next year Gordon Hayward, it won't be like Al won't have to score 26 points a game, and maybe there will be a game where Kyrie's off and Hayward's off, and Horford isn't in the kind of score 26 points mode, and maybe then he'll have one of those games that makes everybody disappointed, like 11 and 6 and 4 or whatever. But during the playoffs, he's locked in, he's ready to go. He's and especially in these playoffs, he is one of the real focal points. He knows that, and he's come out and just proved it every single night that he's ready to go, that he's ready to, like you said, exploit the mismatches. And the Celtics do a great job of running sets that get him those mismatches, and they get him Marco Bellinelli in the post, who he just crushed last night. So I do think so. The Sixers have players who the Celtics can target, throughout their lineup, and I think Horford is one of the most logical guys to be the guy targeting that matchup. I could definitely see him, continuing to be really good as this series progresses.
It really is remarkable the degree to which Horford is just such a Swiss Army knife. Like you said, he'll do whatever it is that is required of him. And when you say it like that, it can almost come off in a negative way, like he's doing the bare minimum or something like that. And obviously that's not how you mean it. It's not how any of us mean it. The guy just, he responds to whatever challenge, whatever task, whatever order is put in front of him. Is it kind of amazing to you, especially after this stretch of games, that his importance is still seemingly just so underappreciated?
It really is. Especially, games like last night. You can look at his stat line and say, again, 26 points, he rebounded, he passed. But you also have to look at the other end where his matchup was Ben Simmons. And Ben Simmons has been amazing over the last few weeks. Like, he has really blossomed into a star. A lot of people are like, this guy's a top 20 player already, and I don't know that that's ridiculous. Like, he's been really, really good. And Horford just made it tough for him. Defensively, he can really match up with those kind of guys. And Simmons is really strong, so when he puts his shoulder down, he can, knock a lot of people backward, but he can't knock Al Horford backward. And Horford, moves his feet, finds the angles so well. I don't understand why people don't, appreciate that a little more. Maybe it's because it's not the flashy stuff. Maybe it's because Tatum does things smoother. Rozier is, just crossing everybody over. Maybe it's, that Kyrie and those flashier guys, maybe he's just kind of boring to people, but he's really good. He's a really good basketball player.
Well, a guy that everybody appreciates, Brett Brown, fawned over the guy entering the series, and really everybody loves him except for Eric Bledsoe. That's Terry Rozier. He was unconscious in Game 1 after a terrific Game 7 as well against the Bucks, which is almost so easy to forget now just with the recency bias of this first game against the Sixers. But he seems to be motivated almost by his own pettiness with all of that Bledsoe stuff and showing up in the Drew Bledsoe jersey and Bledsoe on the scoreboard in Game 7 and Bledsoe's tweets, obviously, after the Game 1 and just the excitement over the jersey. He's as confident as he has been all year, but is that sustainable?
It's tough to. I would say that his making 7 3-pointers in a game probably isn't sustainable. That part might go down a little bit. But look, the guy's been great at home, and that's just that has been sustainable throughout the playoffs so far. Obviously we only have 5-game sample size, but he's been great at home, and I would expect him to continue to be good at home. I would not be surprised at all if he still struggles a little bit on the road. He's still a young guy. If you kind of look back through his career, this is the first time in his 3-year career that he has, been entrusted with minutes like this and with a role like this. In the past, during the playoffs, he was like a spot shooter, basically, who could get offensive rebounds as a guard and who could defend pretty well. And now he's, trying to be Kyrie Irving. He's trying to be that facilitator, that scorer off the dribble out of the pick and roll. And, that's a tall order for a guy, who's basically in his first year of that role. But he's playing great. I could definitely see him continue to be good at home. Obviously, so much of it revolves around his shot. If his three-pointer is falling, he's really hard to guard because you have to come out and cover that, and then he can blow by you. So as long as he's still making that shot, I guess a lot of it is sustainable as long as you're not expecting, 80% three-point shooting. But everything else, he's been, pretty consistently good.
Well, and big picture on Rozier for a moment, and it's one thing to know something, it's another thing to believe it, right? And Terry Rozier, I'm sure in his head, has always believed that he was capable of doing what he's doing right now. But he didn't know it until Kyrie Irving went down, he was inserted into the starting lineup, and now he has gone through the experiences where he has shown not only himself and the team and the staff and the whole freaking NBA what it is that he can do, and that he can be one day a true bona fide starting point guard in this league. Hell, maybe he could be that next year for another team. Yep. He's, to his credit, he's always been deferential, meaning he knows his place. He knows that clearly Kyrie Irving is a better player than him and that there's no debate there in terms of who starts when both are healthy. But is it going to be difficult for him to go back to the bench after this run next year?
And like you said, it's not a referendum on him at all. He's been very deferential. I think it has to be, and that's not, a negative, on him. He's just played so well. He just looks so good out there. And, for a guy who, he knows. Like, you could tell that he knows. You can tell that he's enjoying himself. You can tell that he's starting to get really confident. I mean, he had that one dribble move in the first half where he, split multiple defenders behind his back and then lobbed it to Marcus Morris, a one-handed dunk. Like, that's not something that a guy who, thinks that he belongs on the bench it pulls off. That just requires a ton of confidence, a ton of, just kind of swagger. And that's really important for a point guard to have that. And he does. So, I think that if, putting him back on the bench, it would be tough. It would be, I think he would know that it wasn't a demotion because it's Kyrie Irving coming back, but I can't see how he would not, I don't want to say chafe at it because I don't think he would be a problem in the locker room. I just think he knows that he is a starter in the NBA, and he's a really good point guard. And I think guys like that, it has to be tough to go back to the bench. I think that would be, yeah.
Well, and look, I've spent a lot of time on these shows, so I won't spend a lot of time on it right now, but I'm among those, I don't know if it's a small group, big group, whatever, but I'm convinced that Marcus Smart's going to be re-signed, Terry Rozier is going to be traded anyway. So maybe, maybe just maybe he's going to find his wish somewhere else as it pans out.
Yeah, I've been a part of that group too. I will admit that I'm wavering a little bit as a part of that group just because he has been so good, and I don't know what it would look like if they did keep him. And I think that's the biggest thing that you have to keep coming back to if you really want him to stick around is okay, so what are you paying him? How does all of that work when Jalen and Jayson come up for their extensions? But at the same time, it's tough to argue with the results. The guy is winning playoff games against really good playoff teams.
We'll get right back to the show in a sec. First, I want to tell you today's episode is brought to you by Mack Weldon. Mack Weldon is a premium men's essential brand that believes in smart design and elegant fabrics. They were sick and tired of walking into department stores and trying to buy socks, underwear, undershirts, and not getting the consistent results. So they started their own company. Mack Weldon products will be the most comfortable you try on. They believe that so much that if you order your first pair of underwear and don't like it, Mack Weldon will refund your money, but you can keep the underwear because otherwise that would be gross. But they believe in smart design, premium fabrics, and simple shopping. I mean, I've spent hours on that Mack Weldon website. I've told you about it in the past because it's not just the undershirts, the socks, the underwear. They have all sorts of great stuff that I'm having trouble choosing what it is I would like to bring home. There's swim trunks, there's shorts, there's pants that you can sleep in, there's travel gear, a backpack that I always rave about. It has a built-in charger for your phone. If you're someone like me whose phone battery dies, it feels like almost instantly. How about having it on the go without actually being plugged into something, a wall outlet? That would be terrific. Mack Weldon's better than what you're wearing right now. Just is. So what are you waiting for? Log on to MacWeldon.com today. Use my promo code CELTICS for 20% off your first order. Again, that's 20% off your first order on MacWeldon.com by entering my promo code CELTICS. All right, let's get back to the show. All right, well, obviously, we've mentioned Jayson Tatum a couple of times, and, you talk about the Terry Rozier swagger. This is a guy who's got a lot of swagger as well, except, what I like to call sort of more of a court swagger, a game swagger, because in general life, in interviews and the walking in, like, he'd never pulled the Drew Bledsoe jersey move, not as a 20-year-old. He's not at that point. But how much are you enjoying this rookie battle right now?
Oh, it's so much fun. These two guys are just so unbelievably good and polished and beyond their years. I think the not a rookie chance for Ben Simmons were, I would almost call them ill-advised, just because
don't piss the guy off.
Like that's the whole problem with like the Donovan Mitchell sweatshirt and everything. He is a rookie. And honestly, isn't it kind of a compliment to be like, hey, your rookie doesn't play like a rookie? But neither does Tatum. Like, Tatum just goes out there and he just, every single game he just evolves something else and brings something else out. He had a crossover on, I think it was on Bellinelli last night, where he just like snatched it back from him, and it was just a disgusting move that got him a layup. These two guys are going to be so much fun for so many years to come, and it's kind of cool that we get in their first year in this budding rivalry. We get to see them for however many games this series goes. That's kind of special. It's going to be really fun.
Well, and Tatum does seem to be kind of quietly relishing in the fact that he is, by all definitions, a true rookie, and the fans are giving Ben Simmons crap.
Yeah, Tatum is the quietest dude. He will not. He's not going to drop anything, crazy for the media or anything like that. I mean, he was literally asked point blank last night, do you think you're a better rookie than Ben Simmons? Which, like, of course he wasn't going to answer, but he said, no comment. But he just kind of smiled a little bit like, I do think he's loving this. I think he knows how, dominant he would have been as a rookie on a team that just asked him to score all season. That was just like, here, go out there, develop, get your reps in. And maybe he'll be better as a result of being on the Celtics and of, playing within a Brad Stevens system, getting all that development from their excellent player development staff. I think all that's very possible, but he would have had a better Rookie of the Year case somewhere else because he's just that good.
But doesn't it have to mean more when you're doing it in an environment like this where it wasn't expected of you and you're thrust into that situation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like he could have gone and had a great rookie year for a team that won 35 games, but to be a fixture, a starter, and obviously continuing to put up the numbers that he does on a team that won 55 and is now playing in the second round, that has to mean more to him.
I would imagine so. It would, I think that if anything bothers him, I suspect that it's that people don't understand that, how important that is. And the Rookie of the Year always goes by counting stats, it feels like. So I think, I'm sure this is what he would prefer. Like he certainly loves to be in Boston. He's said it multiple times, and he's said, how much he appreciates what Stevens has been able to do in terms of putting him in a great position. And the Celtics really trust him. I mean, look, Jaylen Brown was a number 3 pick last year, and he sat on the bench for, a lot of the season. He only played, however many 15, 20 minutes a game, and Tatum was starting on opening night. Even when Gordon Hayward was healthy, Tatum was a starter. So, he definitely appreciates the opportunity that Boston is giving him, and obviously Boston appreciates him quite a bit too.
Yeah, probably still owes Marcus Morris a dinner for that, for not being healthy with the knee or something. But just a little bit more on Tatum before we move on. He's gone for 20-plus in 3 of 4. He's consistent. He's aggressive. He seems to be setting new NBA and C's rookie playoff records nightly. Basically, as the stage gets bigger, he gets better. So ignoring the moment, what does all that tell you about his future?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough to project at this point. And it's a very small point of caution, but the one point of caution I would always give Celtics fans is we expected Tatum to be this good. Coming out of college, everybody was saying, look, this guy's polished, this guy's going to be good right away. Don't know what his floor is, don't know what his ceiling is, but he will be a talented player right away. So that was always, at least somewhat expected. I don't know,
but not this quickly, because he wasn't going to be. Coming in, we thought, well, maybe he'll play like Brown last year, 17 minutes a game, something like that, not in excess of 30 and starting every single night.
Right, yeah, exactly. Like, people expected him to be polished. Nobody expected him to be starting on a team that, is up 1-0 in the Eastern Conference semifinals. And for him to not only be starting, but to be the featured scorer and, the probably, I don't know if he's the best scorer with Horford out there, but he's, one of the top 2 or 3 for sure. And he's the guy that they're going to in mismatches to just attack the other team's, weaker defenders. So that is really special. I think in terms of his development, there's a lot he can still do. I mean, think about how good he would be if he just didn't lose the ball sometimes on his drives. That's going to come, with being an NBA player. That's going to come with, added comfort, added strength. As he adds strength, he's going to get better and better. I don't know what his ceiling looks like. He could be. I mean, he will be an all-star for a lot of years. There's not really any question about that at this point. And I think, I think there's some optimism, around everybody that he could be, the next, franchise star. Like he's that good. He's, just really showing at this point in his young career that is where his ceiling is at. So, he can just do everything. And when we keep seeing more and more every single game, all of a sudden he's a pick and roll player now. Like, I don't know when that started, but yeah, he's special.
See, this is how I can tell you don't want to go like full talking head mode, because by now we would have heard untouchable and future MVP, better career than Paul Pierce. But look, I've parroted some of that stuff as well because I'm that big a believer in the guy. But it all boils down to he is just we haven't had a rookie like Jayson Tatum around here since Paul Pierce. And so, you factor in that it's been 20 years and now we get to see a guy taking on this much responsibility this quickly. It's a lot of fun to watch. That's basically the simplest way to put it.
Yeah, and I think it's always more fun for fans to have their guy. I mean, that was what made Paul Pierce so special is, he was Boston's guy. Like I think that's always big. I'm always hesitant to throw around untouchable because, you don't know what's going to happen with Anthony Davis. And I don't think that you can pass on a chance to trade for Anthony Davis if it comes available. And you don't know what's going to happen down the road, but he's as close to untouchable as a rookie can possibly be. And that is incredibly high praise because you don't know what a rookie's going to do his second year, his third year, but you kind of know with Tatum. Like, you know this guy's going to be awesome.
All right, let's go back to Game 1 because the defining stats really were the numbers from 3. Boston hit 17 3-pointers, Philadelphia only 5. Thing is, that's not realistic. Neither total.
Right.
Water tends to find its level. So that in mind, did the C's steal one effectively, or did their desire to run guys off the 3 systematically kind of create a possible trend that we might see going forward?
I definitely don't think it's going to be as easy for Philly to, get their threes as it was against Miami. The Celtics defense is just really good. And the thing about the Celtics that a lot of people, kind of underrate is just how big they are. Like, they play really big lineups a lot of the time, and that affects your shooters because if you're tall and you have long arms and you close out, you can get away with an extra step one direction or the other, away from the player so that when you close out, you're still high enough to make the shot difficult. So, especially if Jaylen Brown comes back, and we'll see what happens there. But, especially if he comes back, it's tougher to score against the Celtics. It just is. I think, water will find its level, like you said. J.J. Redick isn't going to continue to miss. He's one of the greatest three-point shooters of all time. They've got shooters all over the floor, and just the gravity that Ben Simmons has when he drives, those guys are going to get some looks. And, they got some looks, last night that just didn't fall. So that will happen. But I do think, like Brett Brown said, there's some of that was the Celtics. And I think if you're the Sixers, that has to be a little concerning because you can't just expect water to find its level. You have to deal with this Celtics defense that is a lot better than the defense that you faced earlier in the playoffs.
Are the C's content to just kind of let Joel Embiid do his thing, force Ben Simmons into passing situations, and then defend those shooters like we're talking about?
It kind of seems that way. I mean, Embiid got his, and the Celtics won by double digits. I think, and the interesting thing about it, too, is that, like, okay, if Embiid scores a lot, most of those are 2-pointers, and the Celtics can counter that on the other end. Obviously, it becomes a math problem where 3 is worth more than 2. And Simmons can really hurt you. He can, especially if he gets going, especially if he starts to really get rolling past your defenders, and that opens up everything for everybody else. But yeah, I mean, I kind of think they are. I kind of think that at least until Embiid proves that he can win a game by himself in this series, and at least until the Sixers prove that particular strategy isn't going to work, it seems it's a pretty good one. If every basket that Embiid scores is a 2, and the 3-point shooters are well covered, maybe you just let Aaron Baines do what he can. And, Baines does a good job against Embiid. Embiid, can still roast him and can still get 30 points and can still do all this stuff. But, Baines is strong enough to at least make it tough enough that he's not going to just roll to the basket every single time.
So you brought up Jaylen Brown. Celtics used an 8-man rotation in Game 1. No weak links. I mean, everybody was good. Is that going to expand to 9 with Brown back, or do you think Brad Stevens finds a way to keep things tighter?
I think that when Jaylen comes back, we could see a little bit less Shane Larkin.
Mm-hmm.
The Celtics have ball handlers. They, can get away with, maybe not using him as much because, he's a guy where you have to start talking about defensively. He's such a pest, but on 3-point shooters, he can't have that length to close out on a guy. He has to be right up in there if he's guarding a 3-point shooter. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw his minutes cut, somewhat to make room for Jaylen, obviously. And we'll see how available Jaylen is. It's possible that he'll be on some kind of a minutes restriction. His hamstring injury is somewhat concerning as far as re-injury. You don't necessarily want to risk it. But yeah, I would say that I would expect it to continue to be around 8 people. Maybe if you want to say like 8.5, and Larkin still gets some minutes because he does bring a lot of energy and he pressures the ball really well. And obviously he had a couple of big shots last night. So wouldn't be surprised if he continued to play a little bit, but I do think that he might be the casualty.
So Brown said after the game he expects to play in Game 2, and like you said, we don't know officially, but he intends to be back anyway, but he is dealing with that hamstring strain. So minutes restriction, that's a possibility, as you alluded to, but he's not going to be 100%. That's clear. I mean, one thing that Brown said that I think is really telling is that, he's basically trying to return from a 2-week injury in a couple of days. So what should we expect from him?
Yeah, I think, the thing to keep in mind is that Brown also said that he was going to be, he didn't necessarily say it outright, but he sort of hinted that he would be ready for Game 1 too.
Right.
So some of it is going to be on the training staff to make a really good recommendation there. Yeah, I'm not sure what to expect from him. He looked he looked like he was in a lot of pain when he suffered that injury in Game 7. He looked like he came back out at halftime and tried to run sideline to sideline. So the last, memory that I have of watching him is just kind of watching him hobble and, really try to work through this pain that wasn't going to be worked through. So, obviously you can still use him. Obviously you can still use the guy who can fly around and defend multiple positions. You can still use the guy who's hitting 40% of his 3-pointers, but, it'll be really interesting will be to see how much limited athleticism affects him, because he's not going to have the full explosion. He's not going to have the full side-to-side lateral movement. He's not going to have that stuff. So, and that's really important to his game. So if he can still be effective, that'll speak volumes for how skilled he is as well as his athleticism. But, I think that having expectations of him coming out and still scoring, 20 points per game like he's been doing in the playoffs and still, defending the other team's, best wing or best guard, that might be a tall order for a guy who's got a grade 1 hamstring strain.
So we've seen one game. It was a great one. Going forward, what's the key to a series upset here?
I think it's the Celtics played kind of the perfect game for these upsets. They need big games from Rozier, Horford, and Tatum, especially with Jaylen out, and they need to defend the 3-point line really well. I think that's the biggest thing is, it comes back to that math problem where Simmons and Embiid are really, really special, but both of them largely score 2-pointers. And you can beat a team that is scoring mostly 2-pointers. You can't beat a team that is killing you inside and then also spraying the ball out to J.J. Redick and to Marco Bellinelli and to Dario Saric and to Robert Covington. There's a lot of shooters on this team. So basically the Celtics just have to play that game again. And they don't have to play the perfect game like they did in Game 1, but they have to follow that formula. They have to follow that mold. And if they do, they legitimately could win this series. But that's going to require a pretty superhuman effort from Rozier and Tatum and Horford, and then, from the defense as well.
Well, we'll end on this, and it's, I'd prefer to end on a high note, but we're not going to do that, because one thing that I think you're kind of, famous for in your writing or your likes and dislikes pieces, there have to be things from Game 1 that you didn't like. I'm certain rebounding has to be on that list. What's sort of in the negative column here? What should we be weary of going forward?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a completely different game as far as rebounding. The Bucks were the worst rebounding team in the league during the, and the Sixers are not. They've got a lot of size. They got a lot of athleticism.
They're the best.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. Other than that, like legitimately looking at that game, I don't know, besides the potential regression to the mean, I don't know how much there is to dislike for the Celtics. They, hit their threes, defended the three-point shooters. I think the biggest thing to keep an eye on is going to be Redick, because that guy can be just a killer if you let him get going. And Smart did a great job on him. Everybody who guarded him did a great job. I just don't think there's any way the Celtics continue to shut him down like that. And again, when the threes start falling for the Sixers, they become a completely different team. So we'll see about that. I think that he's going to be kind of the key to the series going forward. I'm not going to call it a dislike because, again, they defended him really well, but it's just really tough to defend a guy that good, that well for, 5, 6, 7 game series.
All right, well, he still thinks Sixers in 6, but he can't wait for the opportunity to change his mind if things go well on Thursday. Tom Westerholm, Mass Live. Thanks, man.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, well, we've heard the Boston perspective, so let's get the Philadelphia perspective. Probably not quite as happy after Game 1 as Celtics fans are. Jess Camerato, who used to cover the Celtics, now does a great job covering the Sixers. She's a Sixers insider for NBC Sports Philadelphia and an old friend of mine. Jess, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Well, I'm good. I'm feeling especially good because the Celtics took Game 1, which is what we want around here and way back in the day, what you would have been rooting for as well. Here's the thing. Celtics, they really couldn't have played much better in Game 1. Could the Sixers have been much worse?
Probably not in a lot of ways. It was two extremes. It was, as you mentioned, the Celtics playing at such a high level, and then the Sixers looked rusty after having such a long layoff from their last game against the Miami Heat. And what happened with the Sixers was uncharacteristic of what had got them to their point. When I look at this game, I see 5 for 26 from three-point shooting, but more so, only 17 points combined from the bench. Marco Bellinelli and Ersan Ilyasova have been such a key part of why they've been able to play so well. So when you only get 17 points from your bench, combined with the fact that Tatum, Horford, and Terry Rozier had absolute incredible offensive games, it was just two extremes versus each other.
Well, and so that's the thing. We'll go back to the three-point shooting, but the depth that you just mentioned, those secondary pieces. Milwaukee, of course, Boston's last matchup, that team proved to have very little depth in terms of anyone who was a real threat after Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton. But Philadelphia, just those secondary guys after Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons lit up Miami. I think an average of 83 points per game in that 5-game series. So outside of J.J. Redick, who got his to a certain degree in Game 1, he had 20 points, they were really quiet in the opener, as you said. So what do you attribute it to?
Well, there's a few things that could be going on. As we talked about just a second ago, the rest. Look, nobody wants to play 55 days in a row, but they had such a long time that practices are different than actually playing in games. And you're doing it on the road, and you're doing it in a really dominating home court. So the things were already stacked up against the Sixers in that regard. But they really have to focus in on those three guys that I mentioned, Horford, Tatum, and Terry Rozier. And those are all players that were on their radar. They're names that have been mentioned leading up to this game in practices and things like that. So it's no surprise. It's not like some random person just exploded off the Celtics bench and did a lot of damage. Those are players that they've been game planning for. So in between Game 1 and 2, they have 2 days to make adjustments. And they're going to make adjustments. And a lot of it they're going to say, well, if they hadn't shot 5 for 26, or in the second quarter they made only 1 3-pointer. There are things that you can point to, but collectively they have to figure out ways to be able to stop the Celtics offense, which Brett Brown going into this had said their offense is just so clever because they can score in so many different ways.
Where was Robert Covington? Are we sure he played in that game?
Robert Covington is a player that comes up a lot from Sixers fans as well. Covington was 0 for 6 from the field, 0 for 4 from 3. The Sixers play him. It's not just because of the offense. It's for his defense. So Covington has not been this player who every night is going to be like that same consistent player. He does have his ups and downs, but it's his defense that keeps him in the starting lineup and a valuable piece to the Sixers. And he's the kind of guy, 3 points in Game 1, he could have, 20 points in game 2. That's kind of Cubs' game.
One more break. Want to tell you that today's Celtics Beat brought to you by Hims. Hims is a brand new wellness brand for men. Guys, how many of you are scared of hair loss? I'd guess a lot of you are, considering 66% of men lose their hair by age 35. How many friends do you know whose hairline is starting to trend in the wrong direction? Are you that person? Because by the time you or your friend notice that hair loss is becoming a problem, it's too late. Stop procrastinating and stop turning to weird hair loss solutions. Hims is your one-stop shop for hair loss, skin care, and sexual wellness for men. The best part about Hims is they connect you with real doctors to treat your hair loss with actual medical-grade solutions. We're not talking about concoctions you make at home. We're talking about prescription solutions backed by science. Just go to forhims.com right now. Sign up is easy. Just answer a few quick questions and a doctor will be assigned to you. Products are shipped directly to your door. You don't have to wait in line for hours. Let Hims come to you. And my listeners get a special trial month of Hims for just $5 today while supplies last. See website for full details. This would cost you hundreds of dollars if you went to your local pharmacy. Just use my promo code. Go to forhims.com/CLNS. That's forhims.com/CLNS. All right, back to the show. Looking at some of the different pieces before getting to the contending with the Celtics side, Joel Embiid, he was effective, but did he seem at all frustrated to you by the way that Boston defended him?
No, if you look at what frustrates Joel Embiid at this point in time, it's really his mask.
But he looks great.
Yeah, it's the phantom of the process. He still has 31 points and 13 rebounds. I've said Embiid could have, he could be blindfolded. He's just that big of a talent, and he could still put up those numbers. I did notice him at times, trying to draw Aaron Baines away from the basket. Whether the Sixers try to play more in the paint, maybe draw some foul trouble, that remains to be seen. But that's the thing with Joel Embiid. It's like, well, was he frustrated by a defense, and then he still goes off and scores 31 points?
Ben Simmons, he accumulated numbers in Game 1, really didn't do a lot, though. It was kind of a good, not great situation. Obviously, he had the 7 turnovers. Was he in his head at all, especially with all the not a rookie chants that were going on?
I asked him if he had heard those, and he said that, yes, he did hear them, and he didn't care. Ben, for being as young as he is, for being a rookie in the NBA, even though a lot of people don't think he is actually a rookie, he is. Ben is so calm and so composed. So he just doesn't let things get to him. He doesn't hold on to things. He shakes it off and moves on to the next game. The thing with Ben is he's capable of he can just put up a triple-double whenever he wants, and he actually came close to that with 18, 7, and 6, but it is the 7 turnovers. To me, when I look at his box scores, it always stand out to me. It's, as the point guard, how accurate are you? How efficient are you? So the turnovers are going to be something that the Sixers crack down on because as a team, they only had 12. So when 7 of them come from your point guard, that's something that they'll have to look at.
Why is he, even if he says it doesn't bother him, which I find, I don't know him personally, you do, but I just find a very hard time believing that, given that, listening to some of his quotes in the past or the whole back and forth with Donovan Mitchell, obviously, his chief contender for that Rookie of the Year award. Why is he so obsessed with being considered a rookie? I mean, he seems defensive about it.
It's not like this is something that he's been making a case for all year. I mean, it's when it came up that it became a thing. I mean, he isn't the person that brought all of this up. It's not like he came in wearing a T-shirt that said, "Hello, my name is Ben Simmons, and I'm a rookie," in case you didn't know.
Or a sweatshirt with the definition of rookie on it.
Yeah, exactly. So Ben's approach is more just like, I'm going to go out there and play my game. People can do what they want. They can wear what they want. They can say what they want. Until the NBA decides that Ben is not a rookie and they recategorize him or they make new criteria of if you are just simply drafted, then you're not a rookie. What's he supposed to do? Be like, well, okay, I'm not going to be eligible for this award, even though I actually didn't play a regular season game last year and I fit all of the criteria. He's a rookie by rookie rules. So it is going to be so interesting to see how this all plays out when that voting is decided, because that's just like, you thought the playoffs were fun. Wait till that voting is announced.
Well, but doesn't it seem like regardless, I guess, of what maybe he said, some of the comments have been, or exhibited to me at least, that he does seem to genuinely care whether he gets this particular honor. To me, and I was just talking with Tom Westerholm from Mass Live, we were joking about it a little bit, and he made the point that, isn't it kind of a compliment that people say you're a rookie, but you don't play like a rookie? I mean, you could almost look at it and say that he's, I don't know, a little maybe too concerned, even if he's not losing sleep over it, a little too concerned with this specific accolade when, in fact, it doesn't matter at all, really.
It doesn't matter, and he's made it clear that he would much rather win games than be named Rookie of the Year. I mean, Ben's vision line for his career is so far beyond whatever he's going to accomplish in year one. Ben is a player who, all-star selection after all-star selection, if he continues to expand his offensive game, I mean, who knows where Ben's career is going to take him. A Rookie of the Year award, he really wants to win it more for Embiid and Saric when they didn't get it last year and Brogdon did. That's really what his motivation has been. So if he gets it, cool. If he doesn't, life is going to go on. Same for him and Donovan Mitchell. Both of those guys have such bright futures in the NBA that maybe this matters right now in May, June of 2018, but we're going to look back on both of their careers and be like, did it really matter? No, they're going to be accomplishing, both of them are going to be accomplishing so much more than this. I'm
glad you brought up the expanding his offensive game because to me, and I come at this particular issue from the mind that I'll just never understand, just as a basketball fan, and you certainly are too, how it is that guys have trouble shooting free throws, let alone having like guys like Shaq, the fact that aspect of his game, it's still all these years drives me crazy. Or guards especially, someone like a Rajon Rondo who couldn't hit a free throw if the net was the size of a hula hoop. For whatever reason, there are just those stigmas that certain guys have. And I watch this team play or certain members of this team play, and it sort of just, as a fan, boggles my mind that we're out there seeing Joel Embiid hitting threes every once in a while, and Ben Simmons literally didn't make one all season long. Not that he took a zillion of them, but the fact that he has not made one, it feels like that should be an aspect of his game by now.
It's not, and that's because it hasn't been a focus for the Sixers. That was not on their radar. Developing his three-point shot his rookie season, that's not a focal point for them. They're more concerned about him being a point guard, and all of the responsibilities that come with that, the defensive aspects of that as well, as we talked about, assist to turnover ratios, steals, things like that, rebounding. It's funny in the NBA because, and it does go back to a player like Rajon Rondo, who both you and I have watched hundreds of hours of his game. A player can put up a triple-double. They can have as many assists as they want, but if they're not hitting threes, if they're not hitting long-range jumpers, then it's a knock on their game. And so when this whole Rookie of the Year voting come up, and take away the whether or not Ben's a rookie or not. I mean, if you look at scoring, right, people say, well, Donovan Mitchell scores more points. For me, if you're going to put a point guard into that situation, which is what we're talking about, I feel like they should be credited also then for the assists that they contribute to. Maybe you're not scoring 20 points a game, but if you have 10 assists a game, that's 20 points that you're contributing to. So everybody's game is different. The three-point shot is not a focal point for Ben Simmons right now. It is something that he does work on and practice. But the way that the roster is designed is to surround him with shooters. That is a very directed effort by the Sixers. Go out, get guys like Ersan Ilyasova, Marco Bellinelli, so that the pressure is not on Ben Simmons to be that offensive guy. He can just be the facilitator.
Sounds like you certainly believe Ben Simmons should be the Rookie of the Year.
I do. And watching this player go start to whatever the end of the season will be, just a way from day one that he just has handled himself with confidence. Some of the games when he goes up against tougher opponents, the way that he just isn't shaken by any of it. I mean, just being around in the locker room and at practices and things like that, being around his demeanor gives you insight and an appreciation into really his potential. So, yeah, he doesn't score as many points as Donovan Mitchell, and no, he doesn't knock down three-point shots, but he does so many other things to change the game. He's such a unique player, and because there's no set criteria for this award, It's not like they're like, well, this person has more points or this person has more rebounds. It's really up to opinion in a lot of ways, and that's why it's going to be really interesting to see what people consider to be the most valuable assets that a player brings.
Well, and much the same as he's unique, your experience is unique because obviously you cover him and you're around that team and him every day and closer to the situation than the majority of people who do vote for the award. Do you think that, and it's difficult to answer this question, I suppose, because your reality is your reality, but do you think if you didn't have that insider experience there, you're off covering the Pelicans or something like that, do you think you would still believe he's the Rookie of the Year?
It's hard to say because I am in the situation that I'm in. I understand how people who aren't around it every single day could just start to compare numbers or things like that, but I got to tell you, too, I think also having covered Rondo for as long as I did, I maybe have a different kind of appreciation for what a point guard can do and how beneficial a point guard can be if they're not the quote-unquote traditional scoring point guard.
Makes sense. All right, let's go back to the series for a little bit here. What's the most difficult thing that the Sixers are contending with right now outside of, as you alluded to already, just trying to find a way to make sure that Horford, Rozier, and Tatum don't all replicate what they just did in Game 1?
Well, one thing that Brett Brown has said is they're going to have to find ways to score. So as you just said, take what the Celtics did, their offense. The Sixers need to get more guys going in this game. You mentioned J.J. Redick still got 20 points, but he shot 2 for 7 from 3. They need more consistency from guys like him and Bellinelli and Ilyasova. They didn't go as deep into their bench as they had been doing, so we'll see if there's any adjustments there. But the Sixers just need to get back to playing Sixers basketball. It looked like the Celtics were playing their style of basketball. And any time that you have to start playing catch-up to an opponent, that's not going to work well in your favor. They were able to beat the Heat because they played Sixers basketball throughout the whole series. So now it's a matter of taking back the pace, taking back the tempo, and taking back the way that they want this game played.
Some of those, I guess, are some of the adjustments clearly that Brett Brown can make. Do you think we'll see any rotation changes, minutes changes in terms of the more featured players on this squad?
I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Who specifically it would be, that remains to be seen. But they made a lot of adjustments in the first round when they put Ersan Ilyasova, started him at center, when they put Justin Anderson kind of out of nowhere on Dwayne Wade. He hadn't played in a while. So Brett Brown has always maintained that rotations are fluid, lineups are fluid. The whole team has a stay-ready mentality because you never know. Amir Johnson played under 5 minutes. Maybe he'll play 10. Same with T.J. McConnell, something like that. They constructed their roster and so that you can have so many different looks. So guys know that Game 1 is not going to be the same as Game 2 in terms of what their roles may be.
So, you know this, you've known me long enough, and I like to have fun. I like to have a good time. I certainly can be a homer on Twitter, but in life, I don't think I'm a homer, and I had the Sixers in 6 going into this series. What was your prediction, and also, has it changed after seeing one game?
My prediction going into this was also Sixers in 6. I think that the Sixers can still pull this one out, whether it's 6 or 7. I'm not really sure. At the end of the day, whichever team wins, does it really matter how many games it took to get there?
That's fair.
But as we talked about, so many things went right for the Celtics. So many things did not go right for the Sixers. This is, I've just seen them play much, much better basketball than this. And you have to think that with these 2 days in between games, they'll be able to make adjustments because this was not the same Sixers team that beat the Heat.
Anything? Go ahead.
No, it was just this was not the style of basketball that they had been playing to this point.
Anything you're overreacting to from Game 1?
I don't know if it's an overreaction. It's more just an acknowledgement of the fact that Rozier, Horford, and Tatum can cause absolute havoc when they want to. So I don't think it's an overreaction. When you look at the numbers, it's just like, yeah, that's a fact. Those guys can be very, very daunting offensively, and again, the Sixers knew this going into the series. Those were guys that they had been targeting.
All right, well, Jessica Camerato does a great job covering the Sixers, a Sixers insider for NBC Sports Philadelphia. And with any luck, we'll have a fun, entertaining series because, Jess, I mean, if all goes well, and certainly on paper that's how we read certain things, it looks like we're going to have plenty more of these matchups in the playoffs in years to come.
I think so, yes. Many years to come when people are no longer rookies.
There you go. Jess, thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
Thanks again to Jess. Thanks, obviously, to Tom. You know, we normally I would take Twitter questions right now. Thing is, we've run super long with the two guests, and I want to let you on with your day. So we'll do more of those next week when this series moves along. Other great stuff planned, and hopefully we're talking about a series that the Celtics are still out in front in. Once again, episode 261 is brought to you by Mack Weldon. Go to MackWeldon.com. Use the promo code Celtics for 20% off your first order. It's also brought to you by Hims. My listeners get a special trial month of Hims for just $5 today while supplies last. Just go to forhims.com/CLNS. See website for full details. Okay, thanks to Nick, thanks to Larry, to Evan, to everyone at CLNS Media. Again, subscribe on iTunes to the shows or Stitcher, or follow me on Twitter at Adam M. Kaufman. Please, if you like the shows and you want more, we're thinking about expanding. Who knows? It's possible. Leave ratings, leave reviews on iTunes. They make a big difference no matter how silly that may sound. Again, subscribe. We're going to be all over the map with the schedule. That'll do it for me. I'm Adam Kaufman. Thanks to you. Thanks to Gino, who we should have seen 2 games in a row before the final buzzer, but you know what? Let's just be polite. Still the playoffs.